Hello everyone. It feels like it was just yesterday that we were in Sharm, enjoying ourselves and learning along the way. So this conversation with you right now is about understanding what we could use as a leverage after having spent such lovely days together. So if you have the sheet in front of you, which has been emailed, this is a sample one. It has Alain's name on it. You will have your own sheet emailed to you. This will have your name on it. So this is just a reference for you. Everyone's sheet in terms of basic data here is identical. You will, of course, learn how to use a sheet right now as I walk you through it. So you remember that we had certain activities that we had been through, certain games in those 3 days. So those are listed over here in the activities. Whilst we participated in those activities, we had some key learnings. We had derived certain inflection points, if we call them, which we all agreed did happen to us. That's listed here. All of that is your key learnings from the various activities. Now, putting the two together brings us into the understanding of what we need to have. So as a result of participating in those activities and getting those key learnings, it made sense to have how are we going to apply this in our work life thought. And that's why we came up with this plan that we'd like everyone to contribute to and succeed in. So from here onwards, our recommendations of your commitment to apply the learning, I'll go through each one of them. You need to identify the target audience that will be put through those kind of learnings. You will need to recommend a time frame or timeline for that to happen. And we can all hope that as a result of your efforts, we will be able to achieve this kind of an output. So let me begin by explaining the activities in sequence. One of the first activities we did on the evening that we arrived was the human bingo. You remember we were sitting by the garden side, by the beach. We had rearranged the furniture. Some of us are sitting on the boundary wall, and we had a sheet of paper with us. And in that sheet of paper, we had certain qualities of different people, and we had to identify who that quality belonged to as a person. So the key learning that we have from that, the first one we had was, it's interesting to get to know the person behind the name or position. How would you apply this in everyday life? Well, we're suggesting that you identify the members of your immediate team. So if you're a general manager, we're talking your head of departments. If they are head of departments, we're talking the direct reports. And you write down a descriptive sentence on each member of that team in your immediate supervision. Once you would be doing that, you will actually achieve the result wherein you will feel that you can relate to everyone as an individual beyond their names or their position. The second learning we had from that exercise was it's interesting to mention their specific talents in an imaginative way, not just in a boring way such as he plays football. But what if you wrote down that he likes to have his movement on the field around the football and he has achieved X, Y, Z while doing so. So you need to basically rewrite their qualities, and this will allow individuals to be recognized beyond their names and departments. So it's a further enhancement of their understanding. And because you remember in the sheet we had a few blanks as we did not have everybody's data, and those people felt a bit left out. Because we don't want that to happen, we need to make sure we get everybody's specificities written down, and that way everyone in the team will feel valued, and this should help contribute some degree of the team feeling happier at work and more engaged, which directly should impact getting a higher employee opinion survey whenever you conduct it. Moving on, we played the lava game, the famous game wherein we had two sides, one side facing the other, moving between the pattern of the block. You remember the game very well, I'm pretty sure. So one key learning we had was it's important to establish the rules. You will recollect that during playing the game, in the initial stages, there were always questions regarding can we move two blocks, or can we carry someone, or can we go underneath someone, etc. All that was not about behavior or attitude being wrong. It was simply because we had not completely established the rules. So at the workplace, recommendation is please conduct a town hall meeting with your team, which is basically an open door meeting with your team, with the intention to get everyone to become more guest-centric. If we do that, there is a good possibility that we will reduce conflict and allow for better coordination between us. In that same town hall meeting, in order to achieve the learning, which is when we were faced with a big problem, it makes sense to break it down. You remember halfway through the game, we stopped the game, we took fewer people, and then we started playing the game till we succeeded. So in the same town hall, it would be suggested that you conduct an exercise to determine those areas of your operations that need to be fine-tuned. This is something that you could achieve quite easily, and once you do that, you will understand better the challenges faced by operations that perhaps you have not been able to see earlier or been able to filter earlier. And you remember how we won the game? We won the game by asking the right questions. So exactly that in everyday briefings is to identify those key questions that departments need to ask every day in order to continue to remain focused on our guest. This will allow us to keep the guest in the center of everything that we do. I hope that was clear. The famous test that we all did, the IMX ADV profile test, the 76 80-page report test. How do we use that? So recommendation is three aspects of the test that we learned. One is that self-awareness is always the first step towards progress. So simple recommendation to apply that is please read the report in full at least once. This will help you get an overall perspective of your strengths and also your blind spots. Identify your strengths in order to leverage them. So where would you do that? You would fill out those pages, 24-25, 54-55. This will also help you to discover your true areas of concern. And then, by focusing on page 21 and identifying two areas that you want to improve, or go back to the conversation I would have had with you to identify your two areas of improvement, would help you work towards resolving your potential blind spots. This approach, which is to work towards your goal, because defining the goal will not be difficult for you. It's in your report. It's also within our conversation we've had. What's going to be important is to follow through so that the goal is achieved. And that is where your commitment comes in, and it's usually the process of putting the goal into place that takes the most amount of energy. The good news is, because you spend good energy on that, you would have already established a new way to work with your blind spots. Moving on, the game on the Minesweeper. You remember this block of squares, 8 to 12 pattern grid. There was only one safe way to move across. This is where we learned that it's important to build on our collective learning. So the most simple application of that at work would be identification of the topics of learning for your team or teams. And the result is an actual learning need analysis grid. You remember during the game, even though some of us had crossed over to the other side, the others who were coming across still required to do it at their own space and speed. So to apply that, allow each team member, once you have designed the learnings of topics or identified them, allow each team member to identify 2 goals they want to improve on. By doing that, you would have helped them develop their own pace of learning on the topics that they are most interested on. And as you remember very well, we cannot clap until everyone had crossed over to the other side. It makes sense that as people start achieving their goals, find a forum, talk about their achievements so they feel successful. Everyone should feel that they have achieved their goal, and everyone then starts to feel that they are now more and more a team. The kitchen exercise, the famous kitchen exercise. I'm sure we all remember even the recipes. So 2 interesting learnings we had. One was it's important to identify the roles in the team and distribute the task according to people's competencies. So if you are better at cooking on the flame, that's what you were doing. If you are better in preparing the ingredients, that's what you were doing with chopping, cutting, etc. So how do you apply that? Well, give adequate and regular time to the inner circle of your team to identify key roles. And this would result in collaborative learning. And it makes sense for everyone to have a personal development plan. And if that's put into place, it will help identify the learning map of the team and also take care of individual needs. We finished the last day with the communication map. Well, actually, we had an interesting conversation with Mohanat where we learned about reputation management, and then we came to this. So I thought for the communication map, the very simple learning we had was, if we are open and transparent with whom we interact, chances are we'll be better at working together. So simple solution, set appointments with the relevant people to build or to strengthen and even grow your relationship. You all have your maps with you. There were pictures taken. You had identified those on whom you wanted to work a little bit more on, and that's what you need to put into action. This exercise will then help you understand the true game of the 3-day interaction at Sharm. So this is the sheet that we are going to share with each one of you. You would be required to kind of identify your target audience and timelines and work on those commitments. I assume that those commitments would apply to everyone in the same manner. If you wish to adapt them because it suits you better, I think that should also be okay. So this sheet is going to be shared with you after this sharing of this dialogue of how to read the sheet and use it. And then onwards, you need to decide together whether you agree this is a good move and how to make this move forward in terms of a full exercise. I wish you all the best, and I do believe that everyone has the capacity to be able to apply the key learnings through their commitments. The team is starting to become a team. Thank you for listening, and I hope that this kind of information, virtual information sharing, has helped you demystify the sheet. And if it's useful, we'll continue to use such interactions wherein we're not binding you for time appointments, and you can learn things as you go along based on your availability. Thank you once again for listening. Take care, and that's all from now. By me, Pancham. Take care.